Gentlemen, I want to visit with you tonight about concerning our bridge out on old Highway 140, old 141. All of us out in the rural area are exceedingly frustrated at the slowness of this project. I got a copy of the contract, Matthew, and the contract states 85 days. The 85 days was October 13th plus 2 days for holidays, so that puts it to October 15th, which is 10 working days ago, which means they're 10 days behind on the bridge. We have only half of the road poured. I don't think the bridge is completely poured. This is a huge inconvenience, and for people in your district, Marty, this affects a huge percentage of the people in your jurisdiction. And I'm telling you, these people are upset that this bridge is taking this long. There seems to be no sense of urgency by anyone involved here to get this thing done. We're up against the weather deadline. There's concrete to be poured. We're going to be getting into freezing temperatures. And I don't see that anybody involved with this really has much of a concern over it. I want to bring this to you guys and say, there's time is of essence on getting this thing done. After the 1st of November, construction projects and concrete pouring can come to a halt overnight. So I'm here to say, what can we do? I've read the contract. You don't have much teeth other than penalties. And I guess my question is, are the penalties going to be enforced? Does this contractor understand time is of essence and he needs to step up and get this thing done? And I guess that's my concern on this, and I guess I'd like some answers on where we go. This isn't something you want to table and say, well, we'll talk about it in 2 weeks, because in 2 weeks the ground could be froze. I think the contractor needs to know that he needs to step up his game and live up to the contract that he agreed to. And I guess that's what I've got to say. I don't know if Mark's got any input into this, but I would like to direct a comment toward Mark, if that'd be okay. And this isn't a derogatory comment. I want to say, Mark, I've talked to your office, and you guys are offering excuses, and I understand, rain delays, whatever, even though there's no rain delays built into this contract. But I want you guys to understand, when you make excuses for the contractor not doing what he's supposed to do, the frustration gets pointed toward you guys in your office. And you guys need to be saying, we're doing what we can to make this contractor live up to him. And you need to deflect the blame where it rightly belongs. You guys are getting blamed for not necessarily things that are your fault. And I'm just here saying, when people call in, let us know what is going on and who actually is the problem here. And that's why I asked for the contract. I wanted to look at this thing and say, okay, who's underperforming on this project? Is it the county or is it the contractor? And I've come to the belief that the underperforming here is the contractor. And I would like whoever the power that be here, let him understand that he is under contract and he's under penalty and that he needs to step his game up and get this thing done. So that's pretty much what I've got to say. I don't know if there's any...
I'm hoping we can get some answers here.
Okay. I'll defer to Mark.
Well, these aren't things we generally put out for public discussion in the course of a contract. Now, part of the contract is standard specifications as written by Iowa DOT. As of last Friday, the contractor has used 78.5 of the 85 working days he's allowed under the contract. There have been rain days that he has gotten credit for over the course of this in addition to holidays. The administration and the counting of working days is defined within that standard specifications, which days we count and can't count. We've been in contact with the prime contractor on a daily basis, asking him for updates on what his plans for finishing are. And I don't look at this as making excuses for the contractor, but Ben is correctly reporting to you why the delays occurred, okay? There's a difference between making an excuse and giving you an honest explanation of why a working day didn't count and why the contractor wasn't able to perform on a specific date. The remaining items of work, we have the reinforced bridge approach sections. They're scheduled to be poured tomorrow. The bridge end posts, which are at the ends of the bridge rail, are scheduled for Friday, either Friday or Monday or Tuesday, depending on the contractor getting his paving machine set up, is the schedule for the rest of the approach paving. Shouldering and ditch shaping remains after that. The board got this update today on their construction report. I don't know if they had a chance to read it or not. And then guardrail installation remains. So, Mark, when you say that rain days are counted as credit, do you think most people understand how that works? I'm not sure if they do. You know, even windy days like we've had when they're interfering with a critical item, when they can't swing reinforcing steel onto the deck, for instance, because of 40-mile-an-hour wind gusts. When it's unsafe to operate, that counts as a rain day, so it's not counted as a working day. All of those administration items are in section 1100 of the standard specifications that when we have a federal aid project, we're required to administer by. And we use those for our local and farm to market projects as well. We don't set the number of working days that are allowed with a bridge project. That's set by the Office of Contracts and Aims. Working day periods, late starts, those type things are also set by Aims. We can make requests, but they aren't always listened to. They're looking at the contracting companies that are available, bidding on projects all over the state. So Woodbury County isn't necessarily their primary interest when they're setting a working day period. I can ask, but I don't always get. This was a project where they gave us an early enough start date where it looked like it could be finished before fall weather set in. And the contractor was up to date until about that second to last week of September when we started to rain, and they lost a lot of time.
If I might make a comment. And I understand what Mark's saying there, but part of the frustration is, and I think labor logs will prove this, the contract said they were supposed to open or close that road and start it on June 19th. So June 19th, they come down, they close it, they take the signs off their bridge, they park a bulldozer on the road, and they don't come back for 10 days and do anything on that bridge. Because I watched it, I'm down there twice a week seeing the progress. For the first 10 days, 2 working weeks, they did nothing. Well, right now, those 2 weeks are pretty valuable. And that's the frustration. This thing, for all of us out there that are inconvenienced by it, there's no sense of urgency to get this thing done. That's what it appears like on my side. And yeah, I agree there's rain. The big thing the rain stopped, and Ben said this, is that it delayed pouring the one side of the road for a week. Well, that's all well and good. They poured the road and haven't done anything to it for 3 weeks. So I guess I don't see where that delay was an issue. It's just, once again, a sense of, let's get this thing done. This is a huge inconvenience for everybody out there, and we've just, you know, the anger is building. Let me tell you that, because I talk to people every day. So, thank you.
We almost need a sign from the contractor if there's such a public disconnect, I think, of what the expectations are. And if you do your homework, and I appreciate that, get the contract, read it, but I'm not sure you understood the distinction of a credit for a rain day.
Right. It doesn't count as a working day, in other words. I mean, this is frustrating for us too. We don't like having.
And we do need to direct it to the contractor as much as we can. If, you know, it's only fair to. And contractors know that we do assess working day penalties. When we had the bridge at Bronson not completed, that cost the contractor over $23,000 in liquidated damages. The project down on the RISE project down by AGP was late. Right now, we're working on liquidated damages with that contractor as well. Is there a risk of that happening with for this contractor?
At the current count, yesterday and today, I believe both counted as working days, so that puts him at 80 and a half. He has basically 4.5 working days before penalty would begin to be assessed.
Okay.
And Mr. Truckee can be assured that that will be assessed, is that correct?
That's our history, is that we do assess working days when it is appropriate, if there's no item of extra work or anything that has caused that delay.
Okay.
I'd have to look back at the labor from that early period, but I know on day 2 after the road closed, they did knock down the deck. But they moved out 2 days later to pour a deck on another project. And that's the way most of these crews work. Bridge contractor will have 4 to 5 crews, and then when they have a deck pour on one of their projects, they pull all 5 crews in to work on that, and then they return to their regular job later. Again, that would be something where we'd have to look. I can't substantiate that the first 10 days nothing was done, because I know on that second or third day the bridge deck was knocked down, and they had started removing that concrete out of there, but they only had 2 people on staff in that period, so and they were working fairly short days. Most contractors are working 45-hour weeks, 10-hour days Monday through Thursday, and then 5 hours on Friday. You know, we're in a low bid environment. We don't bid incentives for early completion of projects in very many cases. That RISE project that's currently under dispute with the contractor on liquidated damages being one where we did have intermittent completion dates. But again, that was one we administered here. That was not administered for us by DOT. I can dictate what working days are when it's our work, but federal aid work, again, is set up by DOT, and you know, I'm sure they lost a day or 2 here and there, but I'd have to look and see what we had in that first 10 days.
Well, if you could please keep us informed, I think
Yeah.
we'll want to know in the next few days.
And we are pushing the contractor. Again, Ben has met with him either on site or by phone daily. Right now, we're waiting on the subcontractor who's doing the paving, so first part of that should go off tomorrow. If it doesn't, it's still a working day as long as it's not raining.
So in your crystal ball, Mark, all this in the past, when do you think that'll be done and open?
We're thinking the second week in November, if all goes well. In discussing with the contractor today, he was told that, you know, there's no reason we shouldn't expect to see that by November 15th. Unless we completely have a turn in the weather, there's no reason it shouldn't be done by then.
Oh, we'll still be on the board at that time, so we'll see.
Yeah.
We got a
Hopefully
head nodding back and forth over there. Isn't quite as convinced.
But, you know, until that liquidated damage date, that last working day ticks off, there really isn't a lot of club we have to wield over them.
Okay. Well, wield it when you can, because I think it, you know, we've heard all over the county how important a road it is, and I know you understand that.
Yeah.
Any other citizen concerns?
I'm going to piggyback on Mr. Truckee here. My name's Jake Kirkpatrick. I live at 1809 Bronson Blacktop, which is the wrong side of that bridge. And like Greg, I check on it quite regular. And for the first 10 days, there was nothing that was done. Nothing. They shut the road down. There wasn't anything there. And I talked to one of the workers that was there when they finally showed up, said, hey, what was the delay? Well, we just didn't have the trucks to move the equipment in. So they shut the thing down for 10 days before they could even move any equipment in. And so that's, you know, as a citizen, that's pretty frustrating right there. When the workers are telling you, we don't have enough trucks to get the gear in to start the job, but we'll shut the road down anyway. A little frustrating on that. And we understand progress down in that part of the world. We got common sense. We understand that if you got to rebuild a road or bridge, that it's going to take time. But when on a decent weather day like today, nobody's there at 4 o'clock, okay? Or nobody's there Friday. I know that they work shorter days on Friday, but if guys are throwing sod on Friday landscaping in Sioux City, then they ought to be in a climate-controlled cab pushing dirt doing something. I understand you can't have swinging stuff going on in the wind, but you can still push dirt. You can still do something around there, clean up the project. You ought to go out there, Mr. Potabom. It's a mess. stuff laying all over the creek. I mean, boards all in the creek, beer cans strung out everywhere. Now, is it workers or high school kids? Nobody knows, but I'm a contractor. I'm a little bit embarrassed by that. And if I'm the county, I'm embarrassed because that's my county. I'm overseeing that project. We understand the inconvenience. And if you've been out on the gravel lately, you know, I ruptured 2 kidneys and bruised a spleen just riding the gravel roads. Now, could I take the hard surface? Absolutely. But do I want to go 15 miles out of my way one way? Or do I want to go 7 miles out of my way to go another way in the city? You can't go to Sergeant Bluff, can't go to Sioux City. You're landlocked, you're trapped. So my challenge to you guys is, for the next 85 working days, drive 15 minutes out of your way whenever you get in your car to go to work, to go to school, pick up the kids, go to volleyball practice, go to church, whatever errand you're running, please drive out of your way 15 minutes. And in about 2 days you go, man, this stinks. We've been living it since the middle of June, and we're frustrated. We're about tired of it. That's all I have to say. I appreciate your time. I appreciate your hearing our concerns. We just want the thing done and over. And when you show up and nobody's working, normal folk don't understand a working day or not. We just see decent weather. It was a historically dry summer. Farmers are screaming for rain. You just think more progress is going to be made, which is impacting the farmers. How many farmers have farmed both sides of the river or both sides of that creek? So how are they getting their equipment? Because they got embargoed bridges all over the place. The short bridges, you can't run heavy equipment on there. So now they got to go way out of the way. I got a neighbor that drives through his field. Now he's compacting dirt. So compacting dirt today means less yields next year because of the dirt situation. So it's frustrating for everybody involved. And if you have any doubts, please go to the East End gas station there on Morningside. They're losing money after money after money because that's a main artery for people going to that side of Sioux City. So all those people that were gassing up there, that little mom and pop shop, they're not gassing up there anymore because they got to take a different route. Just normal things like that that you just don't think about that are just putting people out. So if I think of something else while I'm here, I'll come back up when you open it back up again. But just know that it's frustrating for us normal folk. Thank you. Thank you.
I know you speak for a lot of other people. Thank you for coming and giving us your concerns in a constructive way. And we certainly will follow up with the engineer on this particular contractor and be informed of everything that we possibly can be. Again, thank you. Any other citizen concerns? Hearing none, item 4 is approval of the agenda. I'll move it.
Second.
Second by Raddick. Discussion. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed say nay. Passes 5-0. Items 5 through 9 constitute a consent agenda of routine action items to be considered by one motion. Items pass unanimously unless a separate vote is requested by a board member. Item 5 is approval of the minutes of the October 24th meeting. Item 6 is approval of the claims. Item 7 from Board Administration includes item A, approval of a notice of property sale resolution for a parcel also known as 3700 South York Street, setting that for Tuesday, November 14th at 4:35 p.m. And item B, approval of a notice of property sale resolution for a parcel also known as 1711 Villa Avenue, setting that for Tuesday, November 14th at 4:37 p.m. Item 8 from Human Resources includes A, approval of a memorandum of personnel transactions, and B, authorizing the chairman to sign the authorization to initiate the hiring process for a civilian jailer for the county sheriff's office. Item 9 from Secondary Roads, Engineer Mark Nera, is approval of a permit to work in the right-of-way for Dennis Gallagher.
I move to approve the consent agenda.
I'll second the motion by DeWitt. Discussion. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed say nay. Passes 5-0. Item 10 for action is from Human Resources Director Ed Gilliland. This is a follow-up to a previously unanimously supported board motion several weeks ago requesting the Human Resources Director to come back and supply the Board of Supervisors with a standardized department head evaluation process, which has not existed before in Woodbury County, and would seek, our board would seek to supervise, as our titles suggest, and be involved in these evaluation processes. So Ed, you have given us 189 pages, I believe, of backup materials, which is a evaluation form for all of the department heads. And I know in the past Supervisor Radig asked for a list, so I think that'll be apparent if there's any questions there on who is to be evaluated. This has also been distributed to the board in email form.
And each one of the various evaluation forms are personalized. The first 7 pages, 8 pages, depending on the particular person involved, each one of those involves their job description and some specific things that they would do. I picked emergency services as an example. The first page is just general. The second page, as you go to that, these pieces, when it talks about evaluation of essential duties and responsibilities, all of these bullet points here, or headings, whatever you'd want to call them, that we're rating on are right out of their job description, their particular job description. If you go to the third page of Gary's, and it would be true with anybody, that you're going to see some different things that are there that you follow in the job description. As an example, in his, it says seek out and manages local, state, and federal grants for emergency services. Another place, which would be, again, right out of his job description. And another place you would find in the job description, you'd find services direct representative of the county board in meetings with public, local, state, and federal agencies and organizations, legislators, committees, and the media regarding emergency services. So again, these are peculiar to that particular individual and to their current job description. So you'll find that, like I said, the first 7 to 9 pages, again, including the job description. There's a score that you can come up with at the end of that piece. The next pages become more general in nature, but they speak to leadership and to things like that. Obviously, for a department head, leadership is an important piece. And one of the things under supervision, first question is, does the supervisor create a climate of trust, mutual respect to increase the potential for productive workforce? How effectively does the supervisor delegate tasks? There are a variety of things like that that speak to leadership for each one. And there are 3 pages on that particular area. And there are other performance factors, and these are also tabs. I can give this to you if you'd like electronically in a spreadsheet, so that you can calculate it using a spreadsheet if you'd rather. So there are other performance factors. There are 3 pages, and then a general summary at the very end for you on the 4th page. And then mutually established goals are the last section. The last section of rating, and then at the very end is a summary of their overall rating. It takes into account each one of those sections. So it does provide you with very specific things for that particular department, as well as gives you some very solid general overall leadership skills that they're rated on. I know I took a great deal of work as well from my staff. Tanya helped me a great deal with this. But again, these are individualized for each department head. And we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Is that right? 10 individual department heads that we have to rate. Again, those are all personalized.
Mr. Taylor?
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. So my only, and first off, before I say anything, I want to appreciation for the chairman, for you, and for your staff bringing this forward. I think it's obvious that it's a lot of time and work, and I think it's a necessary good governance thing and management. So my questions relate to, you have the Siouxland District Health Director and the Conservation Executive Director. Both of those have statutory boards that evaluate both and set salary. So I guess my only question relates to if that process is being done by both of those boards. Is that something, maybe that's a question for the board, that we want to necessarily be involved in, because that can potentially, I'll just share, sitting on Siouxland District Health, if they have a chairperson and they have day-to-day interactions and there's a divergence, the same person sits. So I would be potentially evaluating Kevin Green as well as the Siouxland District Health Department. So that's one question. Same with conservation, so.
And the point is that this board designates a liaison to that board, not necessarily direct supervision of that particular. So let's hear from Ed on that first.
I would say that it does create just a really murky area. Anytime you have a board that has that much authority. Some boards are more just advisory in nature, but Siouxland District Health and certainly the Conservation Board, they very much they have almost the same kind of authority that you have over someone like myself. How do I want to say this? You get into an area where probably evaluation is probably a good thing, but at the same time, that evaluation doesn't necessarily hold a lot of muster. I guess you've kind of got to sell it to their board. Say these are the criteria that you used and what you looked at, and I would think personally that involvement with their board in the evaluation process might make a lot of sense. Something like would be if somehow there was, let's say, authority over me from another area, and you had input as to my position and what I was doing and how I was performing, but that other board that set my salary, if you visit with them and work with them, they may have a little bit different view than you do. They may see some things differently, but certainly the two of you could come together and I think make a very effective, hopefully very constructive type of evaluation that would help lead the department or the board, in this case, in the direction they want to go.
So it's not really disputed that it would be or could be redundant or even in conflict if there is a board or commission that has that sort of performance evaluation authority.
Yes.
I think it's a helpful tool, as you said, to pass on, but I'd be hesitant to, as a part of our board's action, to require that or give the signal that we're going to do so without that going through that board or that commission.
I would agree. I think
Okay, so as it regards Siouxland District Health Director and Conservation Executive Director, what are the board's thoughts on that?
I'd recommend against having a second evaluation, especially if it gets into, there's this glowing evaluation from the Board of Supervisors liaison, and there's a negative one over somebody who has both personnel management and salary setting ability, or vice versa. I think the same thing holds true with emergency management and the social services coordinator. I think those can clearly become very murky waters very quickly. It's my thought.
And it bears noting that there was no emergency management
no.
director in this pile, so there are different directors and leaders that are accountable to different boards and commissions.
Yeah, it's a very unique, county government's very unique. It's certainly got its very hard to pinpoint sometimes who's in charge.
I didn't see board chairman in here either. So
What's that?
I didn't see board chairman in here. Review.
Oh,
So,
okay.
I don't know, you get one of those.
Well, you can be assigned to that, Keith.
I was going to say on the directors that have an outside board, if we want to give them maybe our standardized now evaluation to give their director, and then we would either approve or receive it as, you know, that would be something comparable to what like the city would have done with the library board or the art center.
I would agree with Supervisor Taylor from the Conservation Board side. For me to do an evaluation on Mr. Snyder, who I have, great respect for him and all, but my contact with him is pretty much as a liaison. It's not really as direct as his board does, and I think that they would be much better qualified to give the evaluation. And I do agree that with my limited, I would hate to have our evaluations be skewed or totally different.
I would advise against doing a separate evaluation. You may want to corroborate together to do one, but certainly wouldn't want to do separate.
So let's get back to the 8 that we do have. You mentioned they're somewhat tailored. Do you want to explain why certain ones are tailored certain ways, just as an example?
Sure. I know we used emergency services in the first example. Again, that comes right out of their job description. And let's see, pick another one here. County engineers, since we're all evaluating him tonight anyway. And since he's not here to defend himself. Oh, wait a minute, I guess he is. But we do have an example that says we lay out specifically for him. I contrast this with emergency services. With emergency services, the second thing, we try to kind of have the same type of categories. For the engineer, we say plans, organize, directs, and controls the department consistent with collective bargaining, etc. That's very standard. But you get down into about the fourth bullet point or fifth or sixth, and then it becomes more unique to their particular item. Like at the bottom of the second page for the county engineer, it says prepares the annual budget for secondary roads department, assist in budget implementations, participate in forecasted funds needed for equipment, materials, staffing, and supplies. We get into the next page. It starts again to match the job description. Is if you look at especially the second box on that third page, it says develops and implements approved 5-year construction program and annual county Iowa DOT budgets, ensures effective, efficient utilization of various budget funds, local, state, and federal, available for specific applications, prepares and submits reports to the board, Iowa DOT and FHWA project status, progress, and goal achievement. So again, nobody else is going to have anything like this at all, even remotely, in their job description. Next one serves, this is pretty common. This is kind of a theme throughout each one. Serves as a direct representative of the county board in meetings with the public, county, and state representatives. Again, some do have specific things, some don't. Now, where it varies in the next part of that sentence, on secondary roads, drainage problems such as right-of-way, safety expenses, and conditions of road. So it starts out with that kind of generic thing that each department head does, that's represent the county. But then it jumps into the specifics of his job, which would be the drainage, the secondary roads, all of those pieces. The next page, again, is specific to, the next page just jumps right into the job description itself. That way you've got a good measure. This is what we've agreed he should be doing and has signed off on. And then you get into general leadership.
What is the reasoning for, other than it fits the template, having a total score, average score? This is a performance evaluation. At this moment, I don't think it's something that affects a director's raise through the budgeting process. It's obviously a step toward, could be seen as a step toward merit-based pay increases, but if you have a score that's here or there, you have the expectation, isn't it more important that the expectations are checked off and there's comments provided for use of human resources throughout the year rather than to focus on a score? If it's just simply, did you meet or exceed expectations here or there, and in particular within the areas that you've laid out here?
I would agree very much that it's more important that they've met expectations and that the job is getting done, the job is being completed, people are getting the service that they need. But the score just gives you one more piece if you do head, like you said, towards a merit-based pay or something similar. If you're making an argument for the engineer really is falling down in this particular, as an engineer, and or the engineer is exceeding what other engineers in other counties are doing, it gives you kind of just a general basis for that type of thing.
Well, there's certain areas where it might be more important to be meeting expectations rather than another area, so that doesn't really translate into a score.
Not perfectly.
Right.
Evaluations never do.
Right.
They never translate perfectly to a score, or you could have the same evaluation with the exact same wording 1 year to the next, and you could have a different interpretation. One might say, okay, these areas were exceeded, these areas were met, these areas are short. You might have one person that's reviewing it as a supervisor that would say, this person's doing an excellent job because he met and exceeded in these areas. Another person would just look at it and say, gee, he fell down in these areas, so he's out. You know, and that could happen.
I don't know if Mark's sweating bullets right now. I mean, we had a couple bridge complaints, and within a half hour, we're talking about the engineer's evaluation.
There just isn't such a thing as a perfect evaluation. It just doesn't exist. As you read through, and I subscribe to Society for Human Resources Management material, and read it, on a daily basis, at least some, and you have organizations who want to throw out evaluations altogether. You have others that strive for them and live and die for them.
You know, the best part of the evaluation is the ends of it where you put general comments, that's where most is garnered from them anyway. But, it's good to have those key points, say, what can you work on? What are you doing well?
Yeah, the effectiveness of a department head ultimately is how well the department ran. Did the department meet the needs of the county? Whatever else you want to say it's much more subjective. If that department is meeting the needs of the county, that department head is successful.
The focus on, when you go to supervision, the 3 or 4 pages for each director, it has a space for measurement standards and supervisor comments. I would think a lot of us would prefer to get that electronic file you mentioned so we can have adequate space to fill in, and the employee as well.
I'd be happy to email.
For example, though, here, why are there 5 measurement standards boxes?
It's a good question. See if I can put those down to be able to see this.
In the middle of the page.
Good question. That one probably was just I would guess would be a typographical error. Because the measurement standard should be one box. Shouldn't have been divided up that way. Just a cut and paste error.
Okay. I didn't know if in there you had separated it out to 5 different measurement standards. What do you see the board supervisors putting in, for example, how effectively does the employee operate and utilize required equipment measurement standards? What sort of text would you recommend in that box?
Which page is that one?
Oh, it's just a simple, I'm looking at the finance operations manager, other performance factors, second from the last at the bottom. How effectively does the employee operate and utilize required equipment? And I mean, the supervisor comments make sense to me, and perhaps a place for the director to fill in remarks, but.
In this case, the operate and utilize required equipment. Again, it's more of a general statement, but specifically for budget analysts, we're going to be talking about computer programs and visual aids and pieces like that. The things that he utilizes to ensure his job is done properly, and that his job is communicated to you, because obviously a great deal of what Dennis does is to communicate with you what the particulars of the finances are, where everything's going to the right account, that everything's been accounted for.
Because my question is directed at, I think the measurement standard would be what the question is. That's just I don't know if the board has an opinion, but I think it's redundant. I think you have the question and you have the comments in addition to whatever the director wants to include.
Certainly could be. I mean, the measurement standards to me would be how are we saying, what are we going to use to determine if this was actually done? So you know, how effectively does the employee, and I'll just use kind of a far-fetched example if you don't mind, how effectively does the employee operate utilizing required equipment? And the equipment in this case would be the HDE system, those types of things. So maybe there would be a standard that you would want to set, or maybe you're more concerned that he's able to present the material up on the board so that everybody can read and follow it. So you can set a measurement standard that would relate to something like that.
I think it makes sense for mutually established goals.
Okay.
Because that's much more relevant, but if you already have a question for each little piece of it.
Are you suggesting taking out the measurement standards box?
Yes.
Okay.
I could see what I'd be doing is just rewording
Right.
what was already there.
Exactly.
So maybe we can just tighten that down.
I'm sorry.
Maybe we can just tighten that down to,
Leave the comments in.
Yeah, just leave a section for comments to take out
because you're
measurement
kind of
standards.
graded.
The comments will contain
Yeah.
any standards. Maybe this is another, I'm picking it apart, Ed, hope you don't mind. So finance operations manager, mutually established goals, is this just an example of what to put in there? Measurement standards, achieve 6 minutes?
I believe so, yes.
I don't know what that means. Dennis, did you achieve 6 minutes? It's right on your evaluation right here. That's the standard. Just,
6 minutes response time to any text I send you.
Yes. It was just,
okay.
yeah, it would be just as an example, that would be, again, just an example of a measurement standard. Whatever it was that you established, are you achieving that? If you achieve that, then you consider that goal to have been met, or that area of required expertise to have been fulfilled.
Sorry, one more.
Sure.
Turn the page a bit. You have mutually established goals, several slots, but then you go on and you have mutually established future goals.
And that, to me, the difference between these, that you've worked together to establish the goals for this evaluation period, and then these are the goals for the next period, kind of what you're planning for the future. You know, the previous ones, the first time you do, we talked about that before, I know when we did evaluations for the you had to start somewhere. And right now, if you have established goals, those would kind of go in here, the mutually established goals. And this one would be establishing for what we would do next year. This is kind of more what we had in mind for next year, for the next period. If you do it every other year, as an example, the mutually established future goals would be more for that type of thing. Employer and supervisor shall work together to establish goals and standards of measurement for achievement of those goals for the next evaluation period.
All right, so far we're taking out measurement standards, and we're taking out the 2 evaluations we mentioned. We don't have jurisdiction to evaluate as a individual supervisor, and we're taking out, I would recommend a numerical score at the end if it's I just don't see the benefit of it.
Okay.
And that would, shorten up the summary you have on the last page and just give space for overall comments, employee comments, and signatures that it's been discussed. Mr. Taylor?
I just have 6 questions, or 7.
Six.
So I think it might be helpful, because of the length of all of these, if each of us maybe looks over each person's and works with that, if there are certain things that we want to see or wording, otherwise we could kind of protract it. But
There's no reason you can't add or subtract it.
right, and I think that'd be helpful. I also wonder, we went from 10 to 8, maybe going back up to 10, the public bidder and board administration or someone are both fall normally under the board chair as far as an evaluation. So
Ed, is there a separate evaluation form already in existence for those positions?
Yes.
Okay, so in that sense, that would just,
So these are director level
okay,
evaluation forms.
okay. And then my other ones, and I know we're in flux and some different things, but like planning and zoning director, I assume does not get evaluated this year, but the community and economic development director hasn't really been a position right now. So do we,
I
is it
think we should
anticipated?
discuss that, so.
Okay, that'll just, and same thing, juvenile detention, we'll have a director for like 5 weeks at that point. So maybe part of those will just be whatever's applicable.
Great time to talk about establishing the future goals.
Sure, sure. No, and I don't disagree, I just think that needs to be acknowledged. as
So
well.
for that position, perhaps only use of the goals piece of this, future goals.
Yeah, for
Make sure
juvenile.
those are filled out.
Yep. That sounds good.
Yeah. In regard to Community and Economic Development Director, a lot of the duties do remain the same. A lot of the expectations are different. It's a new position.
Maybe just leaving blank those that would be applicable to the community planning side of it.
Well, we need to, I think, I'd like to have board support on either doing an performance evaluation, or as with the new director, having a simply future goal session again. What do we think?
On that one, I would think a future goal thing, because we had even talked about it a while back about maybe telling them different goals that we have for that position. I think that'd be a good time to implement those and make sure they're known to the new director and use it going forward.
Okay.
I'm good with that.
I just think we're not going to really, perfect the review sheets here tonight. I mean, it's kind of a general guide map, and as we do reviews, we can write in the margins. You don't have to
Yeah.
when that sheet of paper goes in the file, it goes in the file, whether or not we filled out a line or a section.
I do think we're making progress, though. What else?
Are these electronically fillable?
Yes,
Okay.
They're Excel files, you said?
they're Excel files, and Excel, and you guys have worked with Excel, you know how that is. It's fillable, but it's not perfect. It's probably not as easy as the fillable PDFs, I would say.
And then my last question is anything on budget within these, because each of the directors, I think this is a critical piece, budgets, and some do very, very well at that. And some, it's be a challenge, so. Is that a part of these without looking at all of them? Is there a place for budget?
We usually we did put budget in there as an example with Mark's. Sorry, Mark. We did have Pace that just showed that he was responsible for setting the secondary roads budgets, that he was, and there is something in that performance section. I apologize, kind of grabbing through, but there is, it's the third page in on all of these. Develops, as an example with Mark, develops and implements approved 5-year construction program and annual county Iowa DOT budgets,
Okay.
effectiveness, et cetera.
As long as that's a common thread, I'm good.
Okay, yes, sir.
Thank you.
Would the best course be for Mr. Gilliland to, after these are somewhat changed, as we've discussed, to set up meetings with the liaisons individually in regards to the directors they oversee, and edit or keep same the evaluation forms?
I think it's a possibility, or I think if we each take, those that we're responsible for and say, this could be added in or tightened up, or I noticed this, and it could be on each person. If there's something, if there's nothing, then looks like you had something.
I don't know, I just, I think we can make do with these, I think, but, if there's things that don't apply, they don't apply. So, or with the time frame that they haven't been in the job that long, and we're always gonna be looking forward to seeing what they're gonna be doing, but like I think Marty was trying to get to maybe is that typically we're talking to our department heads on a regular basis anyway, so I know I talk to Mark probably on average every couple of weeks, so if not more, once in a while, so.
I know it's not totally fair since not all department heads are here, but do the couple that are here have any questions while we're all here? Okay. All right.
Thank you.
Well, what's important to me is to approve a process, an expectation that by the end of the calendar year, in other words, the end of the liaison assignments for that particular year, that these directors receive the opportunity to provide their comments and supervisors to provide their directions and goals. So does that sound good to the board? Mm-hmm. Yep.
After looking at it, if we have any questions on any specific one, we can get a hold of you.
Yeah.
Yeah, they can be changed.
We'd be happy to sit down and go through it and change it. We could work with WCICC and probably put it in the fillable Adobe format too, if you'd like. So,
I think that's preferable.
okay.
Seems to work pretty well for us.
Okay. Let's see if we get what we can do to get our software geniuses online and have them show us why they're smarter than we are, or at least than I am.
So yeah, I think if you format these like we discussed and you send those on to IT, then I think that can be done.
Yes.
And with that, so our previous motion was that the liaisons would do these if unwilling or unable or out of commission or whatever, the designee of the chairman, certainly in coordination with the HR director if you would like. But process-wise and for this agenda item, the motion would be a move to approve a process of annual standardized department head evaluations as presented by the HR director, to be completed by the liaisons or the chairman's designee in their absence on by the end of the calendar year. Questions? Second by Taylor. Questions on the motion? Suggested revisions to the motion?
No, that was perfect.
Thank you. Perfect, he said. All right. No further discussion, then all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those say nay. Passes 5-0. Thank you. Item 11 is the chairman's report. Did not put it on the agenda, but I do have a chairman's report on Sioux City Conference Board meeting. Attended on the 27th. The only major item was to approve the contract for John Lawson, the new December 1st, was the only applicant.
Quality applicant, he was though.
Yes. You were, Supervisor DeWitt was involved in the interview committee. Is that correct?
Yep.
I don't believe I have anything else this week. Item 12 is reports on committee meetings. To my right.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. So as I'm sure most of you know, there was a Sioux Rivers region meeting. I won't belabor or go too much into the details except to say that our resolution to go for dissolution or terminate the region failed. We believe that's unfortunate for Plymouth and Sioux County taxpayers as well as Woodbury County taxpayers because it's going to mean a protracted process, one that I think is unfortunate as it's clear that Sioux and Plymouth counties cannot stand alone. We then asked for withdrawal with provisions because the 2080 is not a bastion of clarity. That was likewise rejected, and unfortunately all of this happened after Plymouth and Sioux counties voted against a previously passed motion of $675,000 for the Siouxland Mental Health Friendship House. I would urge you all to please visit there. There were several different provisions of why that was voted against. First, it was location, which we've heard for more than 12 months. Second was that there was not time to visit personally, which again has been for more than 12 months. And then third, I appreciated my friend Don Cash just coming out and saying, you know, as long as we're going to talk about withdrawal and this, we're going to vote against essentially Woodbury County's interest. Obviously, Plymouth County's building project went forward. I think it's interesting to note that the $275,000 that was expended there, approximately $175,000 came from Woodbury County taxpayers, but Plymouth objects to $105,000 approximately being spent in Woodbury County on this project. I'm appreciative that we had, as you know, the director of the Friendship House speak here about the fear and retaliation, and we believe, I'll just say that much for now. We will go most likely into litigation to seek, as we've been allowed to by the DHS director, a new home for Woodbury County and the ability to levy mental health funds and do so in an equitable and transparent way. So there's a little bit of opining and opinionating in that, but that's the update.
Can you elaborate on the triggers or possible best, worst case scenario on litigation? Because I know Woodbury County representatives said repeatedly that was not their goal.
Sure. So we have legal counsel with Heidman Law Firm, and we're going to seek, as you may update the board, and they may have seen that withdrawal notice has been served. So Woodbury County has withdrawn as of today. So that is our right to do, as well as the right to look at other regions. And so these 2080 agreements normally have November 15th. What we'll have to go through on the litigation process is there are obviously unexpended funds. There is now a region that clearly, by anyone's stretch of the imagination, cannot stand, despite their best hopes. So rather than amicably dividing up and continuing on in a way that still provides those mental health services, you're going to see there will be the spend of Plymouth, Sioux, and in this case Woodbury County dollars in order to come to some sort of agreement. So, and plan for next week is to put forward an agenda item related to the seeking of entering into another region, as well as a response to some questions that the Taxpayers Research Council has raised, because there is a lot of misinformation that has been spread from those who would not like us to be able to have the ability to go into another region. And that's what I think is sad in this case, that the two other counties are so invested in not allowing us to go. Cherokee County obviously left before we left, so those four are down to three. Now we're down to two as of today for July 1st of 2018. Can't stand alone, and I think they should be looking elsewhere on behalf of their best interests. So.
I think it would have boded well for Woodbury County had there been the level of media attention there was at the Monday meeting compared to the past few years. It's interesting to note that there was more media presence I'm aware of on Monday, October 30th, than likely in the combined 3 years of region meetings in Lamar's. So the fact that a lot of this has been seen as a sudden phenomenon is partly due to that.
Go ahead. On your, for next week, do we have any estimate on that? And I know we're going to go through the litigation on this, but do we have any estimate on the cost of the litigation? I
No.
mean, will Hyman firm give us any idea what it's going to cost?
No, I think that's kind of an impossibility just based on how long or if we go to trial and what happens in that, so.
Any other reports on committee meetings?
He covered it pretty well on Sioux Rivers. It was really disappointing, I thought, because the board had clearly given the Friendship House direction to spend $675,000 on a building. When I made that motion, I expressed concern about them staying in the building they were at because they're spending a lot of money on a kind of a small, unfit older building. And the new solution was, we suggested either look at a different building, when they were coming up $100,000, $180,000 over the estimates. So they, in good faith, did everything we asked them to do, and then to be turned down was very wrong in my opinion. And quite frankly, nothing has rescinded that motion to spend $675,000 on a building. So legal standing wise, I think they actually are still in a position they could actually request that money.
And I think it'll be up to Siouxland Mental Health to have its own legal counsel, which I understand may be an option. It's sad that our largest mental health provider has to go that direction. I thought maybe if we objected to its use on the grounds that it wasn't proper mental health funding, maybe Plymouth and Sioux would have voted for it.
Would have funded it.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Any other reports on committee meetings? Item 13, any board concerns?
Citizen concerns.
Oh, sorry. Citizen concerns, thank you. Item 14, any board concerns? I do have one. I'm going to be a dad.
Congratulations.
So.
It is a concern.
Thank you.
Got 5 more to go.
Taking plenty of unsolicited advice, unless, of course, it's apparent to me that you don't like me and wish ill for my future. I probably don't care what you have to say.
Cloth diapers.
What's that?
Cloth diapers.
Oh.
You're nuts.
All right.
Yeah.
All right, any other board concerns? Thank you, we are adjourned.
Congratulations.
Oh.